Let everyone drink up their cup. Here's a health to the old apple tree.
Hello, my name is Rio Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world.
Hip hip hooray!
Let everyone drink up their cup and health to the old apple tree. A little fun ditty we heard coming into this here episode 393 of Cider Chat. Welcome if you're a new listener, and hello to all my good friends out there in Ciderville who have been following for a while. Do hit the subscribe button. I don't want you to miss anything. Soon we'll be saying goodbye to Season 8 of Cider Chat and rolling into Season 9 with just amazing stuff coming on the horizon for 2024. But before we say goodbye to this year of 2023, we have this wonderful replay of episode 303 with Al Sachs, who will be telling us how to really run your own Wassail. And if you've never heard of that before, well, it is a gathering of people around an apple tree to really celebrate the orchards and honor the natural world, and also to pay tribute with a hope of an abundant fruiting season moving forward. And for anyone who is a grower out there in Ciderville with apple trees, each season has its challenges. So anything we could do to, well, have an excuse for raising a glass is fine by me. And also to really have that focus on abundance. And it's kind of an ode to, I think, also to the farmers and orchardists who really work hard to get an abundant crop against all odds, frost, different diseases, all that kind of jazz. So this is a season for celebrations, and you're going to learn in this episode how to have your own wassail, some great tips. We'll be going to that episode feature shortly, but first we have a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville, starting first with one of the sponsors of this here podcast. CiderCon 2024 is a little over 2 weeks away once this here episode goes live. It's taking place in Portland, Oregon, starting on January 15th with cider tours. There's actually only one tour that is still open for reservations. So if you are headed to CiderCon and you thought, oh, I could wait, do not make that a habit. Do not wait when it comes to cider people going on tours, because everyone loves a cider tour. And this one going out to the Columbia Gorge is going to be spectacular. The ride alone is worth the trip. So do note, if you're thinking a tour, sign up for that. It's the last one that is open. But there is so much more going on than just those cider tours. It's a huge, huge project put on by the American Cider Association with a lot of help from a lot of wonderful people, also like the Northwest Cider Association and CINA and all the different makers attending. There's going to be a cider share on Wednesday. Tons of stuff. And now the schedule, I think it's the most updated one, and things do change, but I noticed that John Bunker's going to be at CiderCon doing not one but two workshop presentations. And those regular listeners out there in Ciderville know that John Bunker is someone I always want to have on the podcast. I record anything that he says. We're going to be having an upcoming keynote address from John Bunker from New York Apple Camp. That'll be rolling out, I believe, in the next episode. I think that's true. Don't hold me to that. Anywho, John's going to be doing first Apples 101, how to identify an apple, and then he's going to be doing how to phenotypically describe an apple. Well, I suppose if you could pronounce phenotypically the first time around, it took me a couple of runs here. I pulled out those bloopers. You're going to be in good hands. So he has Apple 101 and Apples 102. Plus, there's tons of tasting sessions. I've heard pretty much all of them are all sold out at this point. But that doesn't mean if you missed out on tasting session, there's going to be a lot of tasting going on, at the hotel and into the late hours and at all the events happening as part of Oregon Cider Week. Yowza. And if you feel like you can't catch up and you're like running tired and you're already headed to CiderCon and you've had barely a moment to look at the schedule, we gotcha. Because myself and Sean Connolly, a.k.a. Cider Experience, you might have seen him on Instagram or Facebook. Sean Connolly and I recorded a Going to CiderCon 2024 episode, and that'll be going live the week before CiderCon. So we got you covered. You are okay. You could listen to that, get your tips. So once you land at the airport, that's where we start. From the airport, moving into Portland proper, what to do, what kind of apps to have for transportation and info around the city, where to eat, a whole bunch of good stuff. And Sean is going to be actually with me at CiderCon as part of the Cider Chat team, helping me do some recordings. So maybe you'll actually see me not running around the conference center as I often do to get those recordings in. I do a lot of interviews, and it's such a busy, wonderful time. I hope to see everyone there. I know, speaking for the American Cider Association on their behalf, they all want to see all the folks in the cider industry, cider enthusiasts, and just really having a moment in time to celebrate all the hard work that everybody does each and every year. So again, that's coming up January 15th through the 19th in Portland, Oregon. You can find out more information at ciderassociation.org. And do know there's also the Oregon Cider Week. There'll be links in the show notes to each of those. And then on Saturday, January 20th, is the Cider Summit's new program just for this conference called Artesians. Artesians by Cider Summit. That's put on by Al Shapiro. So you have like a whole bevy of cider-focused stuff going on in Portland. And to kind of take the rabbit out of the hat, it turns out like Portland is like one of the highest consumption data numbers in the US of A for that city. So if you're headed to Portland any time of the year, you're going to be able to find a lot of great cider to be had just in the city proper. And if you're going for CiderCon 2024, and I sure hope you are in the good hands for all the fine work that the American Cider Association has done to bring us up to this point. So tip of the hat to them. Make sure if you're not a member, join today. And if you can't make it to 2024, you know there will be 2025. And you got to keep on shooting for that prize. You don't want to miss out. Don't go and have that FOMO. No. You want to sign up today at ciderassociation.org. I'm going to go out on the branch here and assume that if you're listening to Cider Chat, you probably really enjoy apples and like to learn about them. And each and every one is super, super unique, which is why on all the different social media channels that Cider Chat is on, such as Instagram at Cider Chat Ciderville, on TikTok at Cider Chat, and on the Cider Chat YouTube channel, I have been rolling out an apple a day featuring a single varietal cider made by Renaissance Orchard. Now, they did this whole, what they call orchard samplers of key cider making apples, pressed the juice, and did a standardized cider for each and every single apple. There's no blended apple in there. And then broke it down to tannins, aromatics, acidity, astringency, sweetness, and phenolics. Gave a little write-up whether it's a blender or an apple that can be keeved. If you're not familiar with that word, just put it in the search box at ciderchat.com and you'll come up with an episode all on keeving. And to give a little bit of history there, where it came from. Was it England? Was it from France? Is it a U.S.-based apple? Just really cool information. And that incredible series has been teaching me so much about apples at a level I really needed to learn. And I highly recommend getting this orchard sampler, which can be found at Vino Shipper. Chris just happened to send me the whole case of orchard samplers earlier this year. I've been sitting on it so I could have something fun to roll out to the end of the year into 2024. And I could tell by the reception that I've been getting on all these different social media channels when each episode goes out that you all out there in Ciderville are enjoying it too. And seeing what is possible as an educational tool. This has really up-leveled things. I mean, and imagine somebody brought this up. I think it was actually Al Sachs, who is on this week's episode, I believe it was, where he said, imagine if you went to an orchard and you said, well, which tree should I get? Should I get a Dabinet or an Ashmead's Kernel or maybe a Marshall or a Friquan? Which one should I have? And all of a sudden they said, well, here, you could purchase one of these little samplers here, taste it, and see if that's an apple that you would like to ferment. Wouldn't that be, that's like mind-blowing. I love that idea, and maybe that'll be something to look at in the future. It's certainly helping me, and I know that coming this year that Renaissance Orchards, they actually sell scion of all these different trees that I have been covering. Wow, now you can listen, you could see the label, and now you have all this information, and maybe try something that you never heard about before. Certainly some of these apples I never heard about before, which is what it's all about. So again, thanks everybody for listening. Keep on following along. If you haven't seen it, just check out any of the social media channels that Cider Chat is on. You can find them all at ciderchat.com and check it out.
Walking through the orchard.
Up next, Al Sachs is going to be telling us how to run our own wassail. But I do want to let folks know who are in North Carolina that Al is actually going to be the green man, the butler. That's the person who kind of leads the wassail at a wonderful cidery and winery known as Botanist and Barrel. That's going to be taking place on January 5th and begins at 5 p.m. So it's going to be an orchard blessing with Al Sachs. You're going to hear some music by Walking Medicine, and there's going to be a bonfire. And I heard, and this is just like throws me over the moon here, that they're going to be providing an actual toast during the wassail. They'll have warm mulled cider and vegetarian chili. There's a suggested donation, and that donation is going to be going to Cider Chat to help Cider Chat continue to spread the word about cider. I tell you, it brings a tear to my eye. Thank you. Thank you, Botanist and Barrel. Thank you, Al Sachs, for doing this. This was just out of the blue to me when I heard this news, and for a podcast that is now rolling into season 9 very shortly, and it's totally listener supported, where every single penny is counted. I mean, I'm hoping that I don't have to eat noodles when I go to Oregon, because it's tight and goes out of my pocket. And when it's going out of your own pocket to kind of keep a podcast alive going into 9 years, something like this is just makes 2024 feel a little bit brighter. So I'd like to thank the folks at Botanist Barrel. It's a kind of a cool family scene there. This wassail is going to be a wonderful time. You're going to get to hear from Al shortly, get a sense of who he is. And if you want to find out more, there'll be a link in the show notes to that wassail. Or you could go to the Facebook page for Botanist and Barrel, or even their website, Botanist and Barrel. Just Google that and look at the events, and there you'll see it, January 5th, 2024, 5 p.m., wassail and orchard blessing. How awesome. So check that out, and thanks to everyone again. All right, up next, we're going to be going to our featured presentation with Al Sachs, all on how to have your own wassail. Al Sachs was last on Cider Chat in episode 72, titled Lost Apples of the Quabbin. He did a presentation with Matt Kaminsky, who is also known as Gnarly Pippins on Instagram. And the two of them were charting different apples in an area known as the Quabbin Reservoir, which was taken over many years ago to build a giant reservoir that feeds the city of Boston. And as such, but 5 towns were basically torn down and moved out of there. Everything. The landscape was totally clear, yet the apples, some of them remain. So that is a pretty cool episode, and I'll put a link in the show notes to hear the lost apples of the Quabbin. But on this here episode, he's going to be telling us about how you can do your own wassail, because he has been leading wassails for a number of years. He is what is known as the Butler, or the Master of Ceremony. So get your cup ready and join this chat with Al Sachs of Amherst, Massachusetts.
Wassails have a long history that go back into medieval and maybe even before medieval times, where in the middle of winter, people wanted to go out and make sure that they celebrated their orchards and wished them well so that they could be fruitful into the next year. Orchards were an important part of the rural economy. If you think about the old ways of orcharding, you would have animals like cattle or sheep underneath the trees, and above the trees would bring apples, and it provided fruit and drink and dried apples, and it was a really important part of a local economy. So wassail, if you go back to the original meaning, comes from the Anglo-Saxon or the Norse, meaning to your health. And in the old days, people would say wassail, meaning I wish you health, and the response would be drink hail, and you would drink a toast to the person who offered the wassail toast to you. I like wassails because they bring people out to the orchard in the winter. We've often been cooped up for a while, and it gets us outside. We remember that there is a whole natural world out there. We're not just staring at four walls. We understand that there's, a real beautiful world at night too. It's not generally held during the daytime, but of course it can be. And it's a way to also celebrate the people who grow apples and maintain the orchards. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit today about what I do to put one together.
Cool. So when you say wassail, it also could be, if I was doing it in the Norse way, it would be veshail.
You're better at the Nordic languages than I am.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so.
I know the songs, but I don't know all the pronunciation from various countries.
Well, it's all about the song. So when does it take place?
Generally, it's thought about as happening on Twelfth Night. And Twelfth Night, of course, changed over time because there was a change from the Julian calendar to the calendar we currently use. But basically, it's sometime like 12 days after Christmas or sometime in January. But I think that people need to think about this as to when's a nice time to do it in January or early February. It really doesn't need to have a specific date. It needs to be when you can gather people together and kind of welcome in the new year, and make sure you're giving your orchard a good kick off to the next season. It's kind of the beginning of the whole apple season.
Mm-hmm. And just to give a nod to our friends down in the Southern Hemisphere, their midwinter time would be in July. And I know that there is a cidery in Tasmania, which is the island off of Australia, known as Apple Isle. And at Willie Smith's, they have their annual midwinter festival in July. I think it's normally around July 15th. And it's kind of hard for us to be thinking about that, but there's a whole other world down in the Southern Hemisphere that is
right.
able to, bring in this tradition. So
they do it backwards down there, and that's a good thing too.
Or we do it backwards up here,
Exactly. Who knows which? Who knows which is which?
It's a round globe. So it takes place. There's two things, like the 12th night, like the traditionalists will be like the 5th or the 6th of January.
Right.
And then a lot of folks really kind of focusing in around the 16th or the 15th, 16th, or 17th. However it falls, it's always like on a weekend these days. I don't know if they did it on a weekend in the old days. It was when it happened was on the 12th night, to be exact. And I love your point that it could be any time of the year. That kind of makes it doable.
Absolutely, and people do this as they'll do some that are very simple. They can do them inside. They can bring a little potted apple tree into like a daycare and celebrate the apples and the trees there. They could do this out during the day in your backyard. Even if your orchard is just one tree, you don't need to have a massive field of trees to do this. But typically, when I try to set these up, I try to find an orchard or a group of friends who want to do this. We will find an orchard and we will plan it for a night that people can come. So you think about all those things you do with any party, like, okay, where are we going to park the cars, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And so here's the typical arrangement that I would think about. You have a place to gather near the orchard. If it's at nighttime, you're going to need lights. And in some traditions, there are torches that are brought to the procession. Mm-hmm. The first one at a wassail I went to was in England at a commercial orchard, and there were a lot of torches. And it was pretty exciting and probably a little freaky for me because coming from the United States, torchlight processions at night were generally things that seemed to be associated with terrible things happening to people and kind of scary. But it was kind of neat to see it in a celebratory way, too. So these days, I've used both live torches and basically flashlights. And the live torches or candles are very fun. You have to be careful because you don't want to burn yourself. And it's always good to have a backup flashlight because unless you're skilled at making torches, they go out. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I always enjoyed going to the wassail that you've done at the Cider House, which is a local cidery in our area here in Western Massachusetts. And I know that Matt Kaminsky, known as Gnarly Pippin, thank you, is often making the torches and handing them out. And what I do know about torch making is going out and getting a good stick, having some wire, and using natural fibers like cotton. You don't want to use anything like a nylon, which could melt.
No polys.
Yeah. And then you wrap that up at the top of the torch, have maybe a pointy end on the bottom, or have a designated spot once you get to the location to put your torches into the ground. And they will burn for a long time, and because you're using maybe paraffin or other different substances on the material itself, they could be hard to put out. So, yes, play safe.
Yeah, be safe. Usually there's snow around in our area, so it's not too much of a problem. So the procession, you want to gather everybody together because you want to process. You want to make a procession up to your wassail site. And, it may be 20 feet, or it may be longer than that. You may want to go. I've gone, for like a half a mile to a site, and that's been a lot of fun. Generally, what you will want to have is a site that's prepared near a large apple tree, which is what you will use as the centerpiece of your wassail. And since it's cold, and traditionally there is a fire. Now, I've been to wassails where they've had 12 fires ringing a tree, which stand for the 12 apostles. And that's a pretty impressive situation when you can see that. But in most of the little wassails I've been involved with in the United States, there's only been one fire. And of course, it's quite welcome at that time of year. People should bring some cider with them, whether it's sweet or made in their own basements or gotten at your local cidery. We process generally to a site. There would be hopefully a fire already going so that people can gather around that. And we wait for everybody to gather and then proceed with a short ceremony, after which we potluck and have a bunch of food. And so that's it in a nutshell. The procession is an important part of it. Traditionally, there is two people who will play the role of a king or queen. Now, that's anybody can be the king or the queen. Typically, it's young people who've been picked to do this. One thing that I've found is that it's great to have anybody do this, but whoever you pick should feel you need to have people who aren't shy, because they will have a role in the ceremony. And so, people can get dressed up in all sorts of funny clothes. And if I am leading the ceremony, which I do I've done in a number of occasions, I would be referred to in England as the butler, who is the MC, we would say in this country. But the butler leads the show and kind of helps people follow along with what's happening. And I like to dress up as a very traditional Celtic character called the Green Man. And you'll see those faces of the Green Man on old churches in England, and the people who have like faces that look like they're made out of oak leaves or whatever. And they're a kind of a half man, half nature, kind of fairy or god. And, this is all about having fun and playing, but also respecting the role that we have interacting with nature and being in concert with nature. And because we are trying to encourage the trees to give us great apples. Mm-hmm. And so we can have more apple cider the next year.
If you're planning a wassail, if it's at your own orchard or you're doing it, as you said, at a daycare center or maybe even at an elder center,
right.
Indoors, you might want to have a little mind's eye on who's going to be the king or queen. But there's other ways to get the king and queen, too. You could pick them ahead of time, but there's also something where you could eat cake. And in that slice of cake, I believe there's it's kind of like what they do in Louisiana to who's going to host a party that year. They have the little gold baby.
Cake, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's also a very tradition in Wales too. There's sometimes they put a coin in a cake, and people could eat the cake, and whoever's got that, oh, I've got the coin. They could be the one who's leading it, or there could be a like you could do one potato, two potato. There's any number of ways that you could pick who wants to lead that, and they need to and they can be celebrated in very sort of gentle ways of of course in the old days you might, if it was a Yuletide celebration, you might be considered the king or queen of misrule and have a lot of mischief up your sleeve and be able to be a little more of a prankster. But it really depends on how you want to see this thing roll out.
Do they lead the procession, or is it?
I like them to lead the procession.
Okay.
And if you're lucky enough to have people who are musical or even partly musical, if they can bring a drum or a accordion or something of that sort, or any whistle or something, just have some kind of a music so people can kind of march along up to the wassail site. And then that's where you sort of start your ceremony around the fire.
Mm-hmm. We're in 2022 now, so just for folks listening out in Ciderville, the king and queen can be anyone. And
absolutely,
it can be non-binary. The whole landscape is at your feet to create whatever wassail you want, but just kind of knowing the traditions here. And Al, I think that at one time, it had to be young people and maybe a virgin. Is that true?
That's what the rules were in the past. That's what I've read, is that they wanted this to be as pure a person as possible as they thought about in the old days.
Right. Just shows you how traditions kind of changed to make it for modern times. So folks proceed up. They're carrying torches, and is this where they'd also be banging the pots and the pans?
They'd be making some noise, but it's not quite yet, but people do need to think about noisemakers at some point. There's we'll get to that in a minute.
I have to say, having attended wassails, I know that there's a certain excitement when everybody gathers, and then all of a sudden you see someone like Al Sachs show up with his green paint on and his celebratory hat. It just gets everybody in this buzz. It's so exciting. Then the torches get lit, and you start proceeding up. It is quite a spectacle to see.
It's a lot of fun. The other things that we've done to help people is sometimes we've been doing this in very snowy nights, and so sometimes we'll have somebody with a pickup truck who can help people who have a hard time walking get up to the site. But you can figure all those things out depending on your locality, and getting access to the site is the thing that you need to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we head up to the site. And then what?
There's a fire lit, gather people together. You explain a little bit about what wassail is, namely that it's a way to bless the orchard and support its defenders, that you want to basically wish the trees in the orchard well so they will provide fruit for the next year. So what I've done, and this varies from tradition to tradition and place to place, and this is a living tradition, so we keep making it up as we go along. But I like to go around the tree 3 times, and that's representing the changing of the seasons, the changing of the year, the changing of the moon. But I like to go around 3 times with the king and the queen leading us. I like to pour a little cider on the roots of the tree to give it strength into the next year. And another interesting thing is that we like to hang toast up in the trees. And the toast in the trees is to support the tomtits, or the little birds, or the robins, or the wrens, who are considered to be the defenders of the orchard. And so we want to give them a little piece of toast soaked lightly in cider, and we hang them up into the trees to thank our defenders of the orchard. And I generally make a joke about it being part of my integrated pest management system. But
hey, that's so true, because think about it. One living apple tree can have like 1,000 different species, I understand, of insects on one single tree. So that it's
absolutely
not just for the mice and stuff; it's for everything. Perfect.
No, birds, deer, all sorts of little critters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And of course our friend the fungus.
Right. That's a little bit changed from like the tradition, because wasn't it Tom Tit? Like it would be a young boy, and they'd call that young boy Tom Tit, or the queen would be lifted up into the apple tree, and that the queen or Tom Tit would place the cider soaked toast on it.
Yes, and that's all. I mean, it depends on which area you've collected this information from as to what the tradition is. So there's been young lads that have been put up in a tree to act as Tom Tit. There have been young girls have been lifted up to be putting the toast in the trees. And I generally just like to have anybody who wants to hang toast in a tree hang toast in a tree. Mm-hmm. Bring some toast.
Right.
It's a symbolic.
It's a symbolic, no doubt.
Right.
And the toast itself, when we say toast, we actually people prearrange and have toasted bread. What do you
That's
recommend
correct.
there? Is that like what you pretty much have seen predominantly, or when you're over in the UK?
Yes, it's some people will have a piece of toast with a hole in it and a ribbon stuck through it so you can hang it easily. Mm-hmm. Other people just take a piece of bread and stick it in the branches, mm-hmm. Or just poke a hole in the bread and stick it over a twig, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or stick it in a Y. I mean, it's again symbolic. It's not really a bird feeding station. Right.
So folks walk around the apple tree.
There are a number of different sort of traditional chants that people would be saying. There's songs and chants. People will sing this song, "O apple tree, we wassail thee, and hope that thou dost bear. For Lord doth know where we shall be when apples come another year. So bear well to fruit well, so merry let us be. Let everyone drink up his cup. Cry health to the old apple tree." And then we say, hats full, capfuls, barrelfuls, 3 bushel bags full, barn floors full, and even a little heap under the stairs. And it's kind of fun to get everybody to act out each one of those different things. Hatfuls, you kind of hold out a little hat. Catfuls, again, you maybe hold out a bigger hat. Barrels full, you put your arms wide like it's a barrel. 3 bushel bags full, you act like you're burdened down. Barns full, you just kind of demonstrate how big a barn would look. And then the little heap under the floors is the last part. And so you can get any way you can get the crowd involved, if you give them little parts to do, it adds to the fun. Mm-hmm. Then people would shout wassail. At this point, start trying to make a lot of loud noise to drive the bad spirits away from the orchards, anything that would provide any kind of damage or injury to the apple trees.
Mm-hmm. Like porcupines in our area. Or bears, bears are probably.
Bears do some big damage. And so do, like, if you have a young orchard, you have your mice and voles and rabbits that might eat the bark. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's been nice is that I've seen people add all sorts of different parts to the wassail, including the reading of poems. And there's a couple Robert Frost poems that are very nice. In a Glass of Cider is one that I like, and I think that's always fun to add into the ceremony. But these are things you can add in while people are standing around the fire when singing songs, because there's a number of different songs that are often can be built into this ceremony. Here you have something that can be done outside. It gets us out into the fresh air.
For sure. Now, Morris dancers are a big part of this at some sites.
That's right.
And do you have anything to say about that, Hal? Or?
Yeah, you need to get to be friends with your local Morris group and see if they want to participate. Sometimes they the wassail I went to in Hereford, England, was led by a Morris troupe, and they were quite funny and quite ribald. They had very politically incorrect humor, but it was very fun evening. People were, they tried to keep it clean for the family part of the ceremony, and they later departed to drink more cider off-site somewhere and sing dirty songs.
Oh, my goodness. So there's always troublemakers. That's what keeps our world so entertaining. So the procession.
You do the blessing on the apple tree. You pick an apple tree that, you think is one that people can gather around in a good old, generally some people say the oldest apple tree, but it doesn't matter. We've done wassails where it's been a apple tree that's like 3 years old. So it doesn't really, it just, and in fact, some of the older poems that you read about wassailing, they wassail plums and other fruits as well as apples. Traditionally, we think of it as an apple-centered ceremony, but it's more of in some ways, it comes out of an orcharding tradition.
Mm-hmm. And wassailing is something that was done and then kind of transformed into caroling, where people would go around, and it was a way not to beg for food or anything, but you'd go up to the door and you would wassail, and people would be able to bestow you with cider and food.
Well, if you go back to its English roots, you can see that there's sort of two strains of wassailing. One is the one that's sort of centered on the orchard, and then the other one is centered on the hall and the main house, and people coming around to wassail at the house, so. It was essentially like many English Yuletide songs, you hear about people coming door to door and asking for, a bit of, pudding or a drink or something of that sort. In wassailing, they were drinking out of wassail cups, which were very traditionally wooden two-handled cups that had a whole ceremony built into them. And I've actually not been that involved in any kind of door-to-door wassailing. But if you think about it, around Christmas time, there are, in the Christian community, there's a lot of different kinds of door-to-door singing that goes on. Caroling, parranda down in Puerto Rico, where people will come and eat and drink together and sing songs. So this is part of a both a really old school thing as well as part of Christian culture too.
Mm-hmm. I kind of like how they do it down in Puerto Rico, where they'll then grab all the people from that house and then go to the next house, and then grab all the people from that house and go to the next house, and it just becomes like this massive party moving from space to space. I think they really have it going on there.
Yeah, and there's a similar up in Nova Scotia in the French-speaking communities. These are more of pre-Lent celebrations, but they have again midwinter festivals where people are celebrating before they go into their Lent with masks and people not knowing who's there, and it's going door to door and having fun with folks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I guess it's always nice to tip our cup to our neighbors in the UK for really creating this tradition as they had it and how it spread out. But really, it's kind of coming down to all of us to create our own traditions around Wassail, and with the main point of getting out to celebrate. And if it surrounds cider and apple trees, all the better.
For me, it's also about connecting back with the natural world and realizing, our sustenance does come from the earth. And the earth is out there doing its thing 24/7 all year long, whether we're outside and enjoying it or not. And it's good to get back in touch with it. I think it's a great community celebration. I think it's a great way to promote an orchard. If you're an orchard, if you're running an orchard, I think it's a way to bring people together and have some fun and some common ground.
Right on. Well, I'd like to say to you, Al, Wassail.
Drink hail.
For the dough, for the dough, the dough, for the dough, the dough, for the dough, the dee, for the devil, for the daddy, sing to
In the show notes for this year, episode 303, you'll be able to find a list of things to do to prepare to hold a wassail. And you'll also find the words to Robert Frost's poem, In a Glass of Cider. At the very tail end of this episode, you'll hear Al Sachs, our featured guest, reciting the poem. And with that, I leave you here. This is Rhea Windcaller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
In a Glass of Cider by Robert Frost. It seemed I was a mite of sediment that waited for the bottom of ferment, and so I could catch a bubble in ascent. I rode up on one till the bubble burst, and when that left me to sink back reverse, I was no worse off than I was at first. I'd catch another bubble if I waited, and the thing was to get now and then elated.
So he's just talking about the bubble going up and
he's talking about being a piece of sediment at the bottom and jumping on a bubble and rising up in the barrel.
How trippy, Robert Frost. I mean, he must have been so much fun to hang out with,
I know.
We like cider, we like palms, we love orchards and having fun. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes there is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider, we like palms, we like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. Oh yeah. We like cider.
Oh, yes, we do.
We like palms.
Oh, yes, we do.
We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason why we do it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
There's a reason why we do it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
There is a reason why we drink it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet.
Oh, yeah.
We like cider.
Ba-da-da-dum.
We like palms.
Oh, yes, we do.
We like orchards, having some fun.
Yeehaw!